this idea, I want to like think about as you let yourself start to exhale and stuff. What are, because that's one of the things yoga can actually do, is help you identify the sensations of being alive that aren't necessarily outwardly as focused, right? I mean, there's the things we do in our lives to feel more alive, but what are the sensations that you identify, especially across the life arc, that are feeling like the touch points of your sensation of feeling alive? And they're quieter, right? At least for me. I think that, like, for example, the sensation of beauty is one of the sensations of aliveness that I want to continually pursue, like in the last third of my life, right? That there's a sensation or of appreciation or of gratitude, or, what are my identifiable sensations that I want to keep knowing that I'm alive as I feel them? And obviously love is one of them for sure. All right, so sit up straight and tall. Start to feel your exhalation. That quiet part of me, I think, is some of the best part of me. It's taken me a lot of years of earning it. And then if I can have my body, like even as I exhale and let the energy drop, even my dropping asana shows me that my chest can lift at the same time. That's why I talk so much about, or often, about letting a silk curtain drop down the back body from the base of the neck to the tailbone, is because when I do that, my chest lifts towards life, right? So that there's this constant interplay between the release and the quiet and the lift. And so this year, I've spent time pointing out the letting go of exhalation and the spark of inhalation, right? So you let your exhalation out and then you feel the invigoration. But what I find when I explore my body as a teacher is that when I truly exhale my back body too, my front body already starts to lift up and ignite without the inhalation. Right? And it's like, whoa, that's really cool. A little precision here and stuff reveals. So that's why so often I talk about exhaling from the back ribs. Because without you having to choose it, I want you to also notice that your chest lifts when you let the back ribs drop and come forward on exhalation. So the processes of outward living energy has already occurred. So soften around the temples, the jaw, the inside of the mouth. And then I want to bring some alertness to my spine. So here's a sensation that I like to identify: alertness that's aiming for appreciation, not accomplishment. So as you feel your sitting bones and your feet on the floor, and you exhale from the back rib, and you start to elongate your spine by hitting down through the sitting bones and lifting up your lower abdomen. This alertness is so I can keep my eyes open, my sensitivity open. It's not frozen alertness. That's for fear. That's for threat. It's the alertness that lets me be able to feel like where my ears are and where the air in the room touches my ears and my skin. And it's an honoring. Balance your head over your neck. Let go of your day and prepare your mind to do yoga. Good, and then release. With the drop of your chin, you go inward. With the lift in the chest, you go outward without your mind. So lift your sternum, drop your chin. Let the exhalation be like water coming down a window pane. Let the inhalation expand you. Raise your head up with closed eyes. Open your eyes. So if you can, bring your hands together or put them on the table or put your forearms on the table, right? And just try to gently, through a feeling on your skin, expand a little bit. Like feeling more, like you can do it with your skin. It can be with your hands. It doesn't so much matter about this, but try to be more aware of the way the outside touches where your skin is. And then, and like where you are in space, right? And then feel that and try to take a couple of gentle breaths in relationship to that feeling of connection, right? So I can tell you, I don't feel as connected unless I gently lift my sternum, right? So I'm just trying to practice breathing into the sensation of connection. Good, and then release. So in the follow-up, like last week, I talked a little bit about the workshop and my conversations with Ruth Lanius, that neuroscientist. And one of the things that I had said, I don't know if I said this, I maybe did, but like, so you have this part of your, like when you and I sit quietly at rest, right? The default mode network, if you remember me talking about that, like your brain lights up even when you're at rest. I don't just mean physically, I mean your brain is kind of in neutral. And people that have gone through a lot of trauma, especially younger in life, so that default mode like a 9-year-old or a 7-year-old, 7 to 9-year-old, when they're not thinking anything and not doing anything, there's a certain configuration that lights up in their brain. And then and it's a certain size, and as we grow into adulthood, that default mode network, or the parts of your brain that are firing even when you're in quiet, expands. It gets bigger. So a 9-year-old's default mode network is actually smaller than an adult's, than a healthy adult. But what they were finding was that people that have gone through early trauma, this is what the neuroscience is showing, has a default mode network that's smaller. okay, that never did the expansion. And Ruth Lanius, who's a clinician, who's a psychiatrist that also sees patients, has noticed that that she has patients that seek threat. They seek, like one of them, the example she gives is someone that steals things all the time as a compulsion. And what they found is that under that threat, her default mode network gets bigger. This person, right? So it's the threat that makes them feel more alive, that has a greater sense of self. Because early on, the threat and their drive for survival lit their default mode network, right? And so I wonder about that. I want my brain to light up in quiet, not just have the threat like bungee cord jumping to actually cause my default mode network to expand its presence, or the way my brain is lit, right? And so that this idea, so sit up straight and tall again, right? So I want to, in my resting state, bring your hands together, right? And I'm not asking you to meditate, I'm asking you to feel and experience. So even at rest, the word they use is you start to recruit more parts of your brain because you're actually trying to feel more parts. So you're adding, right? Like this feel of alertness in your spine, and the connection between down and up, and you're feeling it, but you're trying to do this and integrate this in the recruiting more of the sensation coming to your brain while you're still at rest. So I'm trying to feel more my center of my chest, my midline, the air on my hands, softness in my jaw, lips together, teeth slightly apart, because I'm trying to recruit what might be called my parasympathetic nervous system, or the quieting part of my nervous system, into my sensation of rest, right? Because asana is going to do this and just add a deeper physical component. So I'm trying to just have more come into me. And then release. All right, let's start to add more physical stuff. So again, let's just get the movement in my sense of proprioception. So I'm coming forward and I'm going back, and I'm just trying to wake up my spine. Because for whatever reason, the midline of me, think about like someone who's aging or has diabetes, they lose circulation at the outer edges of their body more, their digits and stuff, because on some really deep level, it's the core of me that's most connected, right? So I'm just going back and forth, trying to get a sense of opening. And right away, early, I want you to take your feet apart. So we're just trying to like go a little faster or differently into, so I'm take your legs apart on the floor and sit up tall. So you're just trying to get this open, right? And so what I want is for you to I'm taking the inside edge. I gotta fix my camera. The inside edge of my wrists and hands, pushing my knees wider apart, right? Right. So this action, right, like that, which automatically lifts my chest, but then I'm gonna follow that, right? And then release. So this idea of, instead of just like letting my spine concave and convex, right? I'm putting grounding up through my legs and lifting my chest and then letting it drop. So I'm actually getting input through my upper and lower body as my spine moves forward and falls back into my body, right? So this becomes a rhythmic part of the movement, right? So at first I'm just getting used to this movement, and now I'm going to add more. I'm going to as I'm doing this, I want to broaden across my low back or my sacrum, right? And draw a line from the midpoint of my sacrum, my very low back, and point it out towards each knee, down to each foot, as I keep moving and coming forward with my spine, right? So I'm using rhythm as a means to do this, right? Back and forth. And now adding my inhalation and exhalation, whether it's through your nose or through your mouth. But I'm trying to coordinate more of me. And in order to feel all the way through my body, I have to have the quiet part of me being part of the movement. Right? And then we're just going to take your left hand, your right hand behind you and just twist a little bit. Right? Again, you're doing it from a wider base. And then go the other way and twist a little bit. So now you're making something asymmetrical in your balance, right? In order to get your mind's attention more. So and then I'm going to go back to this forward and back. So I want you to notice the contrast, right? When I'm pushing against my knees, like when I just stay in this vertical plane, right? And then I'm going to again go to a gentle twist, do the same thing, do it a couple times. I come concave my back a little bit, lift my chest, but now I'm not being as symmetrical, but I'm trying to be. And I'm going to switch to the other side. And just kind of, this is like cracking your knuckles before you play piano, right? You're just trying to get more and more sensation imprinting the mind as it's received by the brain, right? Good. And then bring your legs, feet together again. Re-engage the midline. So place your feet down flat on the floor. Feel your sitting bones. Take your hands on your knees and push your knees back into your pelvis, and then go back to this concaving and convexing, the falling, the coming into your experience and falling out of your experience. So the living sensation isn't just coming into life, it's also falling out of life. Like they're both sensations of being alive. And I think when you want the risk or the threat, you're thinking the sensation of aliveness is coming just from you stepping in, and it's not. Right? So then take your left arm up in the air, hit down and hit up, and then just go back down. And obviously watch your shoulder if it's tender, and then you're going up. And I'm grabbing to make sure I stay grounded by grabbing the wheelchair between my seat. Right? And I'm just going back and forth, right? But I'm making sure I'm stabilizing my base. So as I go up, I can hit down through my sitting bones in my feet. So I'm not off balance, right? So I'm just doing this a few times, trying to literally grow myself, like my spine, longer, right? And then I'm going to sit in the center again and find the center. And then I'm just going to take that arm out and back down. I'm going to try to coordinate more of me, if that includes your breath, great, of just moving. And hopefully you know that when I take this arm up, my left arm up, I better hit through my right sitting bone. Why? Because unless I get reference, my mind will forget the midline because it'll be too engaged in the outer movement, right? And then take this arm up and over. Get a little bit more of a stretch, right? Up and over, right? So now I'm adding like blood to the stretch, to the muscles that are stretching a little bit along my side body, right? Then I want you to take just your left leg off. Keep the right leg in the midline still, right? And feel what that feels like. Ground both legs. Equalize your chest, right? So then I want you to, as your left leg's off to the side and your right leg is in the midline, I want you to twist. So we're just changing the base. Instead of both legs off, there's a tension between hitting the right foot down and in, having the left leg off to the side, and using the contrast between the two to hit down through the sitting bones and lift my spine. So I'm just feeling, I'm just changing the variation, right? And then I'm going to go the other way. So I'm going to use the back of my hand against the leg that's in the midline and turn towards the leg that's off to the side. And then I'm going to switch, and they're going to feel quite different, right? And then I'm going to switch, and I'm keeping the tension within my own pose. I'm keeping the sense of the midline and the opening, right, as part of the same pose, because the tension creates the awareness. And then bring the left leg in. Fine. So there, you've always got pretty much always have, except like in Shavasana, opposing forces in an asana, right? So now I'm going to take this leg off, the other leg off, the right leg off. But again, I'm doing this to keep one leg in the midline and one leg off center. So I'm introducing the tension of asymmetry, right? And I'm going to like ground the midline, the inner edge of the midline leg, and feel extension out the knee of the leg off to the side. And then I'm going to turn, right, and twist towards the leg off to the side, but keeping the tension in action between, so I can keep track of my midline, which your mind judges as not relevant, right? Just like we kind of judge our default mode network as not part of our personality, right? So now you're going to go the other direction. So I'm going to twist towards the midline leg, but I'm going to make sure this energy keeps rolling in as I move in the opposite direction from the energy going this way from the midline. And then we're going to do it one more time. We're going to go off towards the open leg. And then the other way. And then come back into center. So there's this pose. So I come back into the center. There's this pose. It's a forward bend. It's called Janusarsasana, which you're sitting with your legs sort of in front of you, and you take one of your legs back and you put the sole of your foot on the inner thigh. So one leg is bent and one leg is straight. Now, typically in the pose, you twist towards the straight leg. You move your belly button towards the straight leg, right? But it's really interesting in Janusarsasana to twist towards the bent leg, right? And the difference between the two actually teaches you some things about twists. So with this setup that seems kind of like, that we're doing one leg on, one leg off, is actually trying to communicate to you an insight from Janusarsasana, which is a full forward bend, which a lot of you aren't going to be able to long sit and balance, right? So again, we're going to take the left leg off. So the left leg being off to the side like this is like the bent leg in Janusarsasana, right? And typically in Janusarsasana, the straight leg that's straight out in front of you. So if some of you can put your leg up on another chair, I'm not going to take time to do that, but the straight leg in Janusarsasana is really important. So this leg that's rolling in towards the midline and staying in the midline, right, is really important, but only a pose translates head of the knee pose, and it's the head of the bent knee. So I want you to bring extra attention to the leg that's off to the side here, to the knee, and then to the foot. And then you're gonna, typically in Janusarsasana, you then turn towards the straight leg while the straight leg is firing in and down, right? In Janusarsasana is a forward bend. Okay, so what I've got going here is I'm trying to recreate some of Janusarsasana by getting this leg to be out, knowing that this is the brain of the pose, head of the knee pose. I'm turning slightly towards the midline, and it's turning towards the inward turn of the straight leg. And then I want you to come forward and elongate your spine, right? So we're trying to recreate what is a very important forward bend in yoga, right? So you've got the head of the knee, the straight leg hitting down, the lift of the chest, and come forward. Now I'm not by my desktop. If I were to try to do this all the way, I'd come forward even more, but I would need a table there so I didn't fall, right? So I've got multiple directions. I've got my awareness reaching out through this knee, this leg rolling in, and my spine coming forward and lifting under my collarbones. And in this complex base, I breathe. And I'm aware of the complexity of the base. I'm not pushing the complexity of the base. I'm aware of it. And then look down, drop your chin and lift your sternum. So go inward. Take a couple of breaths. Good, and then release. I'm gonna bring my leg back. Could maybe try to show you a picture. Gotta find my yoga book. I'm gonna be in the center here for a second because now I've introduced an asymmetry into my inward body sense, right? So I'm just trying to let it be centered again. Then I'm gonna take the other leg out, right? And remember, so this is like, if you know yoga, is the bent leg that's the sole of the foot, it's not happening, but it's on the inner thigh. The sole of the foot of the right leg is on the inner thigh of the left leg, right? And so at first I'm gonna try to turn, right? Because this is how Janusarsasana goes. I'm gonna turn towards the straight leg as I'm still trying to ground the straight leg down and in. So the core of my energy is turning in, but I'm turning my belly button towards it. I'm keeping my awareness in the right knee, keeping that complex base and coming forward into Janusarsasana, right? Lifting my sternum, finding the simple within the asymmetry. Good, and then release, come back up, take, be in the center. So one of the things about Janusarsasana, so if you look in B.K. Iyengar's book, The Holistic Path to Health, right? In almost every sequence, Janusarsasana is in almost every sequence for your well-being, right? And there's a lot of reasons for that. And one of them, though, is that, and it's supposed to be really good, like for your kidneys and your adrenal system and a whole bunch of stuff, right? But one of them is that you're moving, you got this complex base, but you're taking your spine and it's moving in different directions out through the limbs in a way that's very inward. So we're gonna do it again, and I'm gonna give you an extra kind of weird instruction that I teach traditional students or people that are in the full pose, not in their chair, right? And I think you'll get what I'm talking about. So like when I had a systemic bladder infection, a very advanced yoga teacher told me to do Janusarsasana a lot, right? And also Mahamudra, which is related to it, right? But it's a systemic pose. So it looks like, so it's different than doing all the movement stuff. This pose goes right near the core, helps your brain see a symmetry that you learn to ground, okay? So again, take your left leg off to the side. And so, right, you're trying to remember this, we're gonna turn this way towards this, the leg that's in the midline. But the biggest anger calls the brain of the pose, the knee that's off to the side, right? So you're getting this, and I'm pushing on this knee that's off to the side. Here, I'll show you. Because I want to get it imprinted into my brain, right? Because I'm paralyzed, I have to make imprints of the poses, right? So I'm pushing this knee off to the side here. I'm grounding this knee. I'm knowing that the brain, if I can stay in the back knee, the pose is going to be more intelligent, right? So I'm going to turn my belly button towards the midline knee, right? And I'm going to ground it. So I'm like keeping my awareness in the back knee. I'm grounding this leg, right? But now here's the weird instruction. I'm going to take the inside edge of my right kidney, right mid back, don't worry about it being kidney, and point it towards my right knee off to the side, right? No, pardon me, let me scratch that. I'm taking the outside edge of this kidney in my mid back and pointing it towards my bent knee. And I'm taking the inside edge of my mid back and pointing it down the straight leg. So in other words, right in my back, I'm creating the mid back, I'm creating two different directions, right? So I've got this kidney mid back pointing out towards the bent knee, towards the brain of the pose. And I've got this kidney pointed down to the midline foot. So no one can see this, but right now I've got multiple directions happening in my spine. And then I'm going to lift my chest. I'm going to ground and come forward, trying to stay pointed at the knee off to the side, grounded down the midline knee, and breathe. And I'm going to trust that BKS Angar knows what he's talking about. Good. And then come on back. I'm going to trust that if he's pointed out it's so important, that if I practice it, I will receive. Right? So now take the other leg off to the side. I realize this is kind of a complicated class. But I'm trying to get in the midline that there's a lot going on. That's why it's so systemic. So remember, now I've got the outside edge of my mid back or my left kidney pointed towards my left knee, right? And the inside edge of my right kidney pointing down to my right heel. So I'm splitting my mid back, lifting my chest, and coming forward. And this is a good place to breathe because I'm not constrained by my legs. The leg off to the side creates space. And I'm taking a few breaths. I'm pointing from my core midline in multiple directions as I'm hitting down towards the earth and lifting my chest towards the sky and going inward by coming forward. Good, and then release. Come on back. Feel the center. So I'm curious. First of all, hopefully you're following the instruction, but are you finding all these instructions fatiguing at all? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Right? That's why it's such an important pose, is that it starts at the core level it starts to get more directions happening, right? So strangely enough, both Mahamudra, which is a version of this pose kind of, and Janusarsasana strengthen you systemically. They're not about this kind of strength. That's peripheral strength. It's trying to get an intensity moving through the core of you, which is really good for long-term health. So we're going to try it again, right? We're going to move a little faster, because why wouldn't we, right? Why wouldn't we try to speed it up a little bit, right? So I'm going to find the midline, because I know I'm going to start introducing asymmetries into my midline as an expression of being alive, as part of the sensation. So I'm going to take my right leg off to the side, find the midline, know that I want my, like, it's almost my peripheral vision is connected to that knee. I'm rolling this intention to this knee is trying to go out wider into the room, right? And I'm keeping my brain in that expansion. I'm rolling this leg into the midline. And I'm going to, in this, when I get it to whatever I'm going to get it right now, I'm going to pause here and take a couple of breaths. And then I'm going to point the outside of this kidney towards the bent knee, the inside edge of this kidney down the midline as I come forward. Then I'm going to lift under the collarbones, right? And drop the chin. And now we're headed towards a pose called Mahamudra, where we're grounding and rising, which is even more systemic than Janusarsasana. And I'm just going to pause here and feel how strong it is here. Good, and then release. See, I can, one of the things about poses like this is I can feel that I'm a little bit shaky. I think it's because I didn't sleep great again. When I get to this whole level, I can feel my tremble, right? And it's not a bad thing. It's like, wow, fatigue actually affects you. So I'm going to take the other leg off to the side, right? And you're going to keep this going this way. So this kidney points out to the knee off to the side. Inside edge of this kidney points down the straight leg. I hit down with my sitting bones, up through my collarbones, start to come forward by elongating my spine, and then drop my chin. So even go more inward as the sternum is rising, as my awareness is staying in my left knee, as my midline's rolling in. I elongate my back by feeling my sitting bones, and I take a couple of breaths. Good, and then release. Come back into the midline. So the good news is we don't have to, we can now at the end start to like do some stuff that isn't so inwardly focused with intensity. So just sit up straight and tall. This is where you really start learning how to sequence. Because I don't want to stay in that depth of focus and intensity. So I'm going to start coming forward and coming back. I want to visit that intensity up and over the back of your chair and then forward. So I want to visit that intensity, but I don't want to pitch my long-term tent there all the time, right? Because that's not healthy either. Everything in moderation, right? And so I'm going backwards and forwards, right? So I'm finding my home center, right? And then I'm going to take the left leg off to the side. And I'm going to put the left arm on the inside edge, and I'm going to just gently twist again. Again, not doing it all so deep and so heavy. I'm just opening, right? But because I've been deep and intense, my mind is staying in my left knee without it even, because I've just done so much work there. So this twist changes a little bit, and I don't have to work so hard to do it. And then come on back to center and bring the foot in and bring the other foot out, right? And then I'm going to twist. So this would be slightly more, right? So I'm going to inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve, right? And extend and open, right? And then I'm going to come back through the midline again. Be in the midline, come forward, come back, forward, back. Take the leg off to the side, the left leg, right? Ground on the inside of that, gently twist this way. Take an inhalation, exhale, put my other arm on the inside of the midline leg and twist towards the bent, the leg that's off to the side. And then come back to center. And then switch again and go the other direction, keeping the base in my awareness. And then back the other way. Bringing the leg in, bringing the other leg out. Arm on the inside of the leg, of the midline leg, and twist, release, switch directions, right? So hopefully your kidneys are, because you've been practicing, are actually kind of following the pose, and then go back this way, and then release, go this way. Good. And then back to the midline. Ground the midline, so I'm hitting on my knees, back into my femur bones going back into my hip sockets. Good. And then I'm going to come forward. Right? So I'm going to elongate my back, which I think is really important, right? Because I don't want to sink into my sitting posture. I want to move my sitting posture the other direction. That's part of why you have a yoga practice. And for me, I need to derotate my rib cage. You've got to start knowing your own body, not just my instructions. So you figure out what you need to do in order to get your sitting bone sitting down, awareness of each sitting bone down to each heel, lifting your chest, spreading across the sacrum, noticing the breath equally into each rib cage, side of the rib cage. And as you remodulate the breath to be more equal in your rib cage, equalize the awareness in your sitting bones and in your heels while your back's elongated. So the empty space created by the elongation of your spine is used to touch down equally towards each heel. As I lift under the collarbones, feel my sitting bones, and make this a pose. Good. And then release. Back up. So from whatever you've gained today, right? So like in various martial arts, for example, right? The center, their chi center is thought to be the solar plexus, right? And it's just all different descriptions of the same thing. So now I want you to take your legs off wide, right? And I want you to take your arms wide. And I want you to just get familiar with like being in that expanded space, right? And then take your arms down, bring your legs back together, be in the midline. So this next time, I remember, I started yoga practicing in a keto dojo. So I hanging out with those senseis, they're called, in their dojo. They were always talking about this place, and I remember, I don't know, I've been doing yoga for a long time, and I had a senior Iyengar teacher, Mary Dunn, like talk about that the start of your legs is right here at the floating ribs, right here. But so is the start of your shoulders and arms, right? So in a way, what she was saying when in yogic terms was that sometimes this is the center of your being, like at the solar plexus, right? And so what I want, as you take your arms and legs wide, I want you to take your arms and legs wide and then get bigger in space. So, right? But now I want you to have the intersection of your limbs be right about here. And then as you move from that intersection out, point with your kidneys out through the arms and knees, right? So in a way, all that work on Janusarsasana was to help you feel bigger in the room, using this as the intersectional space of your limbs. Good, and then take your arms down. We're gonna twist again now. Now, as you feel where the back knee is and the leg, just like stay in your whole body, but stay centered at this intersection, right? There's no, and then come back to center. You're not doing these hard, right? You're doing them soft. There's no one way to describe any of this. Then I'm gonna go the other way. Different art forms, martial arts, yoga as an art, are all drawing, and then come back to center, are all drawing on the same insights of our nervous system, right? So be in the center. So now I want you to practice the symmetry, because in order to find the intangible midline, you're gonna need structure. So, or your mind's gonna need structure. So feel where your feet are, your sitting bones are, each side of your chest, of your collarbones, each side of your head. Feel the back body come forward. And now also include this intersection, going both towards the knees and up to the shoulder tips. Lift your sternum, drop your chin. Raise your head up with closed eyes. Open your eyes. And now prepare for Shavasana. So get in that position. soften the jaw, the temples, and let the quieting sensation fall into the structure of your symmetry. So I can tell right away I got to straighten my head. Remember, we're trying to now feel where the asana practice has brought us, the deepened sense of where our body is in space. And as I practice symmetry, I'm hoping I can integrate that full bodied presence into my sense of rest, into my default mode network, and take a moment to feel everything before I descend towards the even more quiet of Shavasana. My eyes are already soft and I'm doing all those things that you know to do. But I'm trying to have a more lit version of myself come into rest. For me, I'm putting my fingertips together today to remind me of sensitivity. Feel your breath. Don't change it. Thank your body. Thank it again. Start to bring yourself back. Slightly deeper inhalation. Slightly longer exhalation. When you're ready, open your eyes and let the light in.